many years now, Hollywood has been obsessed with wokeness, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and putting as much of that into stories as possible. Any opposition to it is always met with the same tactics, the same name calling, the same subversion, the same gaslighting, the same stuff again and again and again. And this has been going on roughly for a decade now. And people are frankly tired of it. And a lot of people have said the culture war is turning, the tide is shifting, because the people who are pushing wokeness have gotten more aggressive about it. Well, that might be true. However, they're not relenting on their quest to do this. Hollywood is spending billions of dollars on wokeness. And I know some people are going to point out, what about films like Avatar: The Way of Water, Top Gun: Maverick, John Wick 4, the Super Mario Brothers movies? I'm going to say this once. Those movies are the exception and not the rule. Hollywood is not learning from them. It is using them as a vehicle to fund what it really wants to make. When a movie like that is successful, it is a win for Hollywood because it gives them the revenue, it gives the studios the revenue to make what they really want to make. Something's got to supplement those movies because they don't make money themselves. Hollywood isn't going to suddenly turn around and stop making ideological movies with its current regime. They are baked into it. And it's also baked into California legislature. From what I understand, making movies that are more diverse, equitable, and inclusive, there is a tax incentive in California to do so. So it all goes back to the centrality of Hollywood. The centrality of the studio system, which is corrupt for more reasons than just wokeness. It all goes back to that. So there's no stopping this train. They are double, triple, quadrupling down on it. You already saw Disney quadruple down in their earnings, or not their earning call, their investor shareholder meeting. You already saw Bob Iger vigorously defend their positions. Anybody who thought he was going to do otherwise was deluding themselves. They are baked in. And the other studios are doing just the same. Look, the reason I decided not to go see the Super Mario Brothers movie was because it's just a vehicle for funding the rest of what they want to do that's woke. That's all it is. And it itself was going to be ideologically subversive. They were going to make it the Super Princess Peach movie. But Nintendo made them tone it down. And as a result, the critics are trying to pan it. But the fact is, if Nintendo didn't step in the way they did, it would have been a much worse movie. And it would have been much more of a divisive movie. It might have gotten more critical praise. But ultimately, it ended up failing. So I chose not to go see it on the basis of adhering to my principles that I'm not going to give Hollywood money because Hollywood hates me. Hollywood hates people like me. They've declared that openly. They've said, if you've got traditional values, if you have a problem with the ideas that we're pushing, then we don't like you. And I do have a problem with the ideas they're pushing. I have a problem with many of the ideas they're pushing. So they've declared open hatred towards me. And I have said I will not give them money under any circumstances as avoidable. I don't care if they make a movie in a franchise I love. I'm going to say no. And that's what I have done consistently. So, despite all this madness within the culture war and despite the fact of wokeness being so dominant, what the heck are people who aren't into that supposed to do? It's easy to walk away, but then what are you left with? You have to go scrounging through old media to find what you want. Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's called the Iron Age. Now, the Iron Age is just one term for the countercultural movements that are happening throughout independent media, but it was coined by YouTuber Razorfist, who I think is one of the greatest YouTubers out there. He's one of my personal favorites. I will advise people that he's not exactly family-friendly, just to be fully transparent for my Christian audience. He is very loose with his tongue. He plays very fast and loose. But he is a man of many principles, I would say more conservative/libertarian principles. And he has been busy creating a lot of independent media and promoting alternative media from various different sources that aren't mainstream Hollywood. And he coined the term, basing it off of the different ages of comic books that we see. We've seen a Bronze Age, we've seen a Golden Age, and we've seen a Silver Age, but we haven't seen an Iron Age. So he suggested the name Iron Age, and it stuck. And that's what the moniker that many people who follow him and people within his orbit have used to create their own independent media. And it's usually pretty good stuff. Obviously, with independent media, it's all going to vary on a case-by-case basis, but it is good. Here's the thing. In order for entertainment to be good again, it has to be decentralized from one bubble, one echo chamber. And some people are going to criticize and say, well, aren't you just moving from one echo chamber to another? But the reality is that isn't true. Just because somebody tends to be more conservative or libertarian or right wing, as they would call it, doesn't mean that they're a hive mind. There's plenty of dissent from people, plenty of different views from people. Some people are conservative and Christian. Some people are conservative and atheist. Some people are conservative and whatever. It's not a hive mind. The whole idea is to get away from a hive mind, but the core uniting principle is entertainment first, ideology last. Because Hollywood's principle is entertainment last, wokeness first. So people want to get away from that, and that's what the Iron Age stands for, and already it's off to a great start. There are magazines, comic books, independent films, games, and music all being produced by creators affiliated with that terminology. And my contribution to it, which I'm announcing right here, is going to be Iron Age Inside. What is Iron Age Inside? Iron Age Inside is going to be another show along the lines of Koopa Talks, Toonie Talks, many of my sit down at the computer and talk shows. But I'm going to be talking about independent projects that are truly entertaining, that aren't ideological, and that are seeking to just be fun. That's Iron Age Inside. It sounds like a magazine, but don't worry, I'm not starting a magazine. I'd love to do that. I'd love to gather together with people and do that, people who have the resources and skills, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm going to start with this show, and then whatever happens in the future happens. But my goal is to shine a light on some good media, stop complaining about Hollywood, because let's be honest, folks, Hollywood isn't going to change. This notion that Hollywood is suddenly finding their way again because they've produced a couple of good movies is completely misguided. Hollywood is just using good movies to fund their bad movies. That's the system that they're going to adopt. So if you keep rewarding them by seeing these films, that's what it's going to be. In order for that entire industry to learn its lesson, it might need to collapse. And the only way it's going to collapse is if people walk away and say no. And people aren't going to walk away if they don't have an alternative. And so people are building alternatives, good alternatives, meaningful alternatives, many of whom are still niche. But guess what? Everything was a niche at one point until it became big. Niches can grow into trends. Trends can explode into a phenomenon. So support what you can. And I know I hate asking people in a time where things are so monetarily difficult with the economy to put their monetary support behind things. But if you can't monetarily support something, get the word out about it. Everywhere you can. All your social media. Even if you have to make social media just to promote it, do it. Put it out there. Let people see it. Create websites, message boards. Do whatever you can to promote good independent content that's bucking the system. Because ultimately the system is the problem. Everything conforms to the Hollywood system. And I sound like a hippie when I say that, but I mean, it's true. The centralized Hollywood system as it has existed has been a thorn in the side of independent filmmakers for almost as long as there's been independent filmmakers. My stupid headphones are not fully adjusted here, and my ears are getting irritated, so you'll have to excuse me. But as long as there have been independent filmmakers, they have struggled to get their foot in the door because of prohibitive costs with technology, with renting facilities and sound stages, shooting on site, hiring actors, screenwriters, all of the necessary things. But that's all changed now. So the barrier of entry for movies has been significantly lowered. Now it's still high for things like, consistent television programs and all these others. But stuff is popping up in the form of technology, in the form of, publishers for books and video games. Stuff is happening, and it's happening at a breakneck pace. And the traditional industries are scrambling because they don't know how to keep up. They're going to try to mimic it at first, but they're going to mimic it in the woke style, and people are going to say no to it. They are objectively, in my opinion, losing. They're losing money, and they're losing interest and goodwill. And as long as they continue to lose that, it might take them 50 to 100 years, but eventually it's going to collapse. And in its place is going to be a new decentralized system. an independent system. That is what I think the entertainment industry needs to strive for. And that's what I think the Iron Age is seeking to do. Independent creators sometimes, and people will be free to collaborate with whoever they want. It'll be collaborations and independent stuff. And it's all looking good. As far as I've seen, most of it's looking good. Doesn't mean it will all be fantastic, you know? It's all subjective, really. But it is an effort to say, screw Hollywood, screw wokeness, screw the notion that entertainment has to be last, and let's start making good stories again. Let's start crafting good stories, good entertainment, actual escapism for people again. And I am fully behind that. I am absolutely behind that. I might not be fully behind it monetarily, only as I'm able. But I stand behind that as a philosophy. Because Hollywood has had it too good for too long, and they've taken advantage of the goodwill of the people who they used to make movies for. Now they only make movies for themselves to pat themselves on the back during Oscar season. I don't care about the Oscars. I don't care about any of their award shows. I don't care if a movie's won an award. Most movies that win awards, most people don't like. It's an all insular system, and it destroys the people that go into it. I feel the most bad for actors, for all of these prominent people who allow themselves to get sucked up in the system and then have the system chew them up and destroy them. There's plenty of people who it's done. Drugs, alcohol, all sorts of infidelity. That's all a byproduct of the fame beast that is Hollywood. Independent media doesn't have to have that problem. It can very easily solve that problem. Because you won't have to chase fame. You just have to create something good. Otherwise, you can just live like a normal person. You don't have to live this high lifestyle. I'm sure with money, ultimately what it comes down to in that scenario is what people do with their money and fame. But if I ever become a famous independent content creator, heaven forbid, I'm not going to pursue drugs, alcohol, and any of that. None of that interests me to begin with. I'm just going to continue to create what I want to create. And I'm going to continue to promote what I want to promote. And that's where the hope lies, guys. It doesn't begin and end with Hollywood. Independent entertainment has been a threat to Hollywood for the past almost 20 years now. And they've really struggled with it. They've really struggled to keep up with it, to the point where they're trying to buy out independent creators. And independent creators, I'm going to warn you, Hollywood is going to approach you, and they're going to say, we want to work with you. Do not work with them. Tell them, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I don't care how many zeros they put on that check. Do not take it. You will outdo them if you stick to your guns. Because they will scoop you up and spit you out as they have hundreds before. They are hungry sharks. They're like criminals. They're opportunists. They will chew you up and spit you out. So don't give them that time of day. If you're an aspiring actor or actress, look for independent people who are making things and start with them and stick with them if they're good. Don't go to Hollywood. For the love of all that's holy, I had to warn several of my friends for many years, don't go to Hollywood, because Hollywood's just going to chew you up and spit you out. And many of them ended up finding out that lesson the hard way. But I've known various people throughout the years who expressed an interest in acting, and I've always said, don't pursue it. Because everything I've heard over the years from doing deep dives from behind the scenes, because I love entertainment behind the scenes, is how terrible the culture is. You see guys like Mark Wahlberg trying to take his kids out of that culture. God bless him. Is he fully agreeable politically? I don't know. I don't particularly care. But what I do know is a man is trying to save his family from a place that is where families go to die. And it's good to see a cultural shift finally happening. People waking up to the realities of how evil these industries are. It's not just wokeness, guys. There is all sorts of evil in Hollywood. I can't even talk about some of the things that are going on there that we all know about. It's that evil. So breaking away from it is not a bad thing. They won't hold the power for long. They're going to lose it. And it's only going to be when we embrace movements like the Iron Age and independent content. That's where the future lies. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been Super Koopa TV with another Koopa Talks, and I will see you guys in the next video. God bless. Have a good one. Peace.